come to me. Come to me. A guardian angel. A spirit of comfort. Spirit of any celestial sphere. Anything. Hear my call. Come to me.
We interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody, my name is Kevin.
And my name's John.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at Nosferatu, a gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake. All right, John, it's a new season of The Real Movie Guys. It's good to be back. This is your first episode. We're glad to have you on the show and joining the team. I think this is going to be awesome. And honestly, I can't think of a better movie to talk about with you than Nosferatu because, dude, 2024 ended with a bang. Like, literally, I think, like, right before, at Christmas Day, we got one of the best movies of the year. How were you feeling on this movie? Just initially,
I really, thank you, and happy to be here. And I really enjoyed it as well. I think it was a big year for horror movies overall. Yeah. I don't know if you saw the news, but it's the first year since the year that I was born that 3 horror movies are nominated for Academy Awards.
Right.
So
crazy.
Yep. And this being one of them, I really appreciated the elements that this movie has been recognized for, which is the design elements, the look of it, the clothing, the scenery, and then most of all, actually, the acting.
Yeah, and it's crazy, too, to think of where, like, Nosferatu came from. When you look at, like, the lineage of this movie, the original Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, was, like, the short film from 1922. And, 102 years later, now we're sitting with this new remake of Nosferatu, which actually takes a lot of inspiration from that 1920s movie and brings it full circle with, I think it's a masterpiece, obviously. Robert Eggers, who people don't know, who's done movies like The Witch, The Northman, The Lighthouse. This man understands movies at a critical level to where it's beautiful, to be quite honest with you. Just everything from the settings to the atmosphere, the cinematography is second to none. And I feel like he understands the source material and chooses to bring this out in a way we haven't really seen with a lot of directors now. Yep. John, what were some of your other thoughts? I mean, there's a lot to talk about with this movie because, again, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think going off that, the look of the movie and the sense of tension and horror that they do a job of creating is very unique, and it's the kind of horror that I appreciate, which isn't entirely based on jump scares and being startled, but just that eerie sense of something is wrong in the world and there's a presence here that we are all terrified of as characters, and you should be as well.
And it's interesting because Robert Eggers, the man can make a hallway look incredibly haunting and disturbing with just the way he lights a scene. Orlok himself, I think, he has an amazing design, which we will talk a little bit later with Bill Skarsgård's interpretation of him. But without the cinematography in this movie, it would not have the same reaction whatsoever. Eggers just uses the right amount of lighting and everything. Because again, this movie, I wouldn't say is overly gory in any way, like a lot of modern horror movies tend to be. It's really just the atmosphere and the setting, I think, that really just invokes that emotion, and I think that's really where this movie is successful beyond anything else.
Sure, and the times that they choose to show blood or gore, it's in service of the plot. It's not gratuitous. It scares you,
right?
More than grosses you out, and it fits. So, I really appreciated that.
Yeah, it's very selective, I would say. It's incredibly selective, and it always services the plot. It's not just for shock value, even though I think some of the dialogue's a little funny for other reasons, which we'll talk about here and there. But let's just really jump into this. So I think I think the most successful thing obviously is the cinematography with this movie, as we talked about briefly before. But more than that, I also think the performances are exceptional. Robert Eggers knew the cast he was getting with this movie. Bill Skarsgård is obviously a monster of an actor, no pun intended. Being the creepy Pennywise from the It movies, he brings this like unrecognizable character at times. I mean, besides his eyes, which he does the weird Bill Skarsgård thing with his eyes where like he has like that one like lazy eye that kind of like travels across.
Yep.
But other than that, John, I don't think I'd recognize it was him really at times.
No,
I mean,
absolutely
is completely
not.
Disturbing.
And I read up a bit on his training for this performance, which involved throat singing training and naturally dropping his voice rather than using post-production editing processes to make him sound different. He really tried his best to embody that character, to bring it to life on the set, in a way that really, showed what he was going for.
Right. And
I think he nailed it.
Yeah, and that's the Eggers trademark. I mean, there is little to no CGI in this movie when reasonable, obviously. Of course, there's things like the shadowing effects, which he uses in this movie, that obviously had to use a form of CGI for the most part. But other than that, they're even like the wolves, like Count Orlok has these like dog wolves that are in the movie. Those are actually wolves. Like, what the hell are we doing in this movie? Like, the man's like, I'm not using CGI animals. I felt so bad for Nicholas Hoult in this movie. Like, he was getting his ass kicked throughout the entire movie. I'm like, you just wanted to punish him, I felt like. Because everything he was going against.
I think one of the things that helped me appreciate this movie is that the plot does not have a lot of twists to it.
Right.
It's a classic story. It goes exactly as you would expect it to. And I think Nicholas Hoult does a good job as being the put upon lead who just has to kind of react to all these supernatural situations going on around him. But while we're talking about performances, Lily Rose Depp, I think, was excellent. I have a couple tabs open in my browser just as I was kind of putting my thoughts together, and I have Nosferatu 2024 and I have Possession 1981, which we talked about after we saw the movie together in theaters. How her sort of psychotic break reminded me so much of Isabella Gianni in that movie. Really great performance, and if you're able to execute on something that's that visceral and kind of deranged and not have anyone in the theater, laugh it off or react to it negatively, you're a good actor. That's it.
No, her possession scene, it's been widely shown in the trailers and on clips on YouTube, I know, where her face just changes, and that's all practically done by her as an actress. And it's disturbing. I don't know really what else to say between the way he shoots it just square straight on and just the way she evokes that emotion. She's definitely moving out of the shadow of her father. Like, she's kind of coming into her own person. Obviously, for people who don't know at home, the daughter of Johnny Depp. And I'm just so happy. We talked about that in the theater too. Thank God she is leaving Kevin Smith's daughter's shadow over there when they were working together. She's a fine actress. If there was any kind of doubt, I don't think there is now with this movie. She definitely she was one of the best characters in the movie. I would even argue, for me, even more so than Nicholas Hoult to some extent. I really was more curious with like what was going on with her. I really was.
Yeah, it was interesting. And I know before we got on the call, we were talking a little bit about reactions to that dynamic, to what was going on with her character. And, what did she really want, or what was she trying to do? But at the end of the day, it was, like I said, it was kind of a straightforward narrative. It couldn't have ended any other way. And what I appreciated most from the movie was just the way it was executed. So the acting and the production of it, I really enjoyed.
Yeah, and again, we have our typical character actors. I won't go too much. Aaron Taylor Johnson, I thought, was actually another phenomenal actor. He's having a good year, actually, with some movies. Maybe not with another movie we may or may not be talking about soon. But this movie, for sure, he was actually a good surprise to see. And Willem Dafoe is Willem Dafoe, so I don't think I really need to go into it. If you've ever seen a Willem Dafoe, he comes in guns blazing. He's absolutely phenomenal, and he takes this role way too seriously, and I absolutely am 100,000% here for it. But John, you brought up something I really do want to talk about, and I think this is where we can talk about some of the who's gonna like this movie, right? I think this is gonna be like the main question. Now, obviously, we're really enjoying it. If you don't enjoy a slow burn, I think it's gonna be turning a lot of people off. How do you feel about that?
So like I said, if you're going into it expecting a more modern horror movie, I don't think it was really that. It didn't have too many startling moments. It was mostly eerie. It was slower to get where it was going. But if you appreciate a more classic tale, which this is, it's based on a 100-year-old movie,
Literally.
and you would enjoy seeing something that follows along that same course but executes it on it very well. I think that is the type of person who would appreciate this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen, got to remember, this is based on a 1920s piece of work, right? And Robert Eggers, we've talked about him as a director, he's a man who looks for perfection in capturing the time period, capturing the way people spoke, the dialogue. So that's going to, I think, automatically alienate just some casual viewers who are maybe not looking for that, especially based on, some of the more modern trends we have in horror. But the movie overall, I think there is an argument, and as much as I do like to say it is a little too slow at times. I think there are points maybe where we did need to speed it up just a little. People were going crazy because this movie's coming out in 4K relatively soon, and everyone's like, oh my god, there's going to be a 3-hour extra extended cut. And I think there is an extended cut, but it's like 3 minutes longer. This movie really doesn't need an extended cut of any kind. It's already ridiculously long. Some other things I guess you could maybe argue is it does at times feel like it does jump around a little bit too fast, where maybe it was kind of toiling a little bit too long with certain scenes, especially with Nicholas Holt's journey to this movie, because in the movie he's actually going to visit Count Orlok because he's trying to sign papers in order to come to the country in order to establish a house. And I don't want to get into too much spoilers, but that's the whole purpose of the movie. But at times we jump between Nicholas Hoult, what he's doing as his character, and Lily Rose Depp's character. We're jumping between times of what they're doing, and you do kind of lose, and I don't know if this is just me, I think you do lose a sense of what the time and how much time is passing. Would you agree with that, John?
Yeah, I think potentially what they were going for is watching somebody kind of under the spell or under the supernatural influence of this being that he can't comprehend or doesn't really know what he's dealing with at that point, and kind of slowly dawning on him that he's in over his head. But I do agree that took up such a large portion in the earlier part of the movie that it could have been expedited somewhat. And
especially, I think, also just a little knock, too, I guess, especially against Orlok has a character that's helping him throughout this movie, who's a pivotal character, and it does just feel like randomly inserted at times. There was a time where we kind of just get like, oh, I'm doing something really bad. Again, I'm trying to be vague here, so sorry, it doesn't sound super specific. There's one insert of his character, and then we don't see him for a very long time, and then they kind of bring it back, and it still just feels like it's just kind of inserted. You know what I mean? I'm not sure how to really develop that thought too much, but I think there could have been a little bit more there, either or cut it out. I don't know. There need to be some kind of readjustments with the scenes, I think, for that.
Sure. And I don't even think with that character that you're referencing that it would be a major spoiler to say that he's in league with the Count, because from the first interaction where he's directing Nicholas Holt's character to go, you can tell he's not a good guy, and you can tell that he's going to get his blood sucked or something when he goes to this castle. So it's pretty much all out there, and you just get to go along for the ride.
And that's something else I brought up earlier was the dialogue. So the dialogue in this movie is perfect. Again, we said it is matching like a 1920s era. I don't think there's any issue with that at all. Absolutely. We were in the theater, actually, and I remember I went to you a couple times, and we were there were times we were just unironically cracking up at the dialogue. What do you think? Do you think that was intentional? I kind of feel like it was, because it did add a little bit of levity to the movie at times where I felt like I needed a little bit of a pressure release.
Sure. You could have an exercise like this where you're trying to really do an accurate recreation of this period and these clothes and this old story that gets a little bit dour and heavy, and I do think that the couple lines that were just straight up funny they broke the tension, but also they gave it a little bit of they shook it up a little bit in a way that I enjoyed.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't take itself too serious. It's also a vampire movie, so you got to be a little
Yep.
bit, and he's having fun with it. Obviously, he's having fun with this really dark, horrifying movie, but at the same time, I think it does break the levity a little bit, and you're able to enjoy it. Now, I know there were some people with this movie. What do you think of the ending? Were you satisfied with the ending, the culmination? I did see a few things online before when we were just researching this before we talked about it. People were dissatisfied a little bit with the ending. Did you feel any anticlimactic feeling with the ending? I actually personally enjoyed it, to be honest.
I thought that the ending was exactly how I anticipated it to play out, which if you're looking at like Grimm's fairy tale, Aesop's fable, some story that you know exactly how this is going to end because this is the classic story, I would have been more confused or more put off by an ending that twisted that in some way. Because again, I think it's just, this is a classic story. We're going to execute on it to the best of our ability. You're going to see some great performances. You're going to see some great design choices. You're going to see great cinematography. And the ending, didn't surprise me, but I felt satisfied at the end of the movie.
Yeah, and again, it's tough to talk about. I don't want to really spoil it for anyone because I know people probably have heard of Nosferatu, and people definitely know the story of Dracula, which ironically, it's just funny that Nosferatu is pretty much like a rip-off piece of Dracula. I always find that super funny. And when you tell people that too, that don't know that, it's really funny. I think it's hilarious.
You got to do what you can do to avoid paying royalties, right?
Seriously.
That's the
Yeah, Nosferatu, it's funny because it was a piece of lost media for a while too, and then eventually they refound it and brought it back because they had to destroy the original cuts, but there were other cuts that were sent to other countries. I think the US actually had a cut of this movie that they found, and there weren't original subtitles or something, so they had to find another cut that actually had the subtitles because this was a silent film too, which again, I think Robert Eggers he's just such a phenomenal director, man. He understands the roots of this movie, bringing in that silent film feel. The visual presentation for Orlok is not just the cliche vampire that we've always seen. Yeah, he does the blood sucking, it happens, and here and there. It's really just the creepy shadowed tension, the visual effect. Even Orlok, which ironically the movie's so dark, I don't think you really get a full sense of what he actually looks like. If you see some of the production, you can actually see the extensive makeup that's on Bill Skarsgård in this movie, and it's there, and it's great, and it's just funny knowing it's there, but you can't really see it, but you don't really need to see it, but the fact that it's there, it just, I don't know, the man's just attention to detail.
Right, and not to spoil anything again, but there is a moment towards the end of the movie where you get a reveal of what he completely looks like, and I think that that's a pretty interesting choice, and actually kind of maybe changes the way you see the character a little bit right at the end.
Yeah, and this is one of those movies where, I don't think it's not going to be a true scary horror movie where people are like screaming and freaking out. It's really just a gothic tale. It really is. Another movie that's similar to this, which, I feel like the marketing is interesting for movies like this, right? I feel like we don't get many gothic tales. Crimson Peak is another movie that comes to mind recently, within the past few years, Guillermo del Toro, where it was marketed as this big, scary horror movie, and it wasn't that. It was a gothic love story, and Nosferatu in its own way is that same kind of story, if not maybe a little more, supernatural in its ways, which, I guess Crimson Peak was too, but Nosferatu, has a different lineage to that movie, but again, fantastic. I think an amazing telling of Dracula, even better than some of the other Dracula movies we've got.
Absolutely, yeah.
Dracula Untold. Was that the most recent one? The action
Yeah,
movie?
maybe a little better than that one.
I think a little better than that, which, again, I do enjoy that movie. All right, so in the comments, don't get mad. I know there's some fans out there. All right, let's calm down. But, 102 years later, Robert Eggers has got the number for this movie. So, John, with all this being said, I don't know, man. I think I'm ready to put a score on this one.
I am ready as well.
All right. I'm going to give Nosferatu a 9.9 out of 10.
You are a villain to speak, sir.
I am an appetite. Nothing more.
I wanted to give this movie a perfect 10, but I do think there are some things that just, I think a little slow, so I just have to acknowledge a little bit of the slowness in this movie. You could have chopped a few things out, but come on, man, that's near perfection. Robert Eggers has made an instant vampire classic. I can't really see anybody else taking this material and doing anything better. The visuals, the sound, the acting, everything is absolutely phenomenal. Instant classic. And, it's actually one of my picks for top 5 movies of 2024, which maybe that is something we should discuss because it was a great year for movies, to be honest.
It absolutely was a great year. Going off that, I think I would give it near the same grade. I'd probably get it about a 9.5. I really enjoyed the movie. Like you mentioned, there is a little bit extra in there that maybe could be trimmed, but I greatly enjoyed The Witch. I greatly enjoyed The Northman. I would put it up there at least with the rest of Eggers's work, and greatly enjoyed it.
Yeah, and again, just to emphasize, this movie isn't going to be for everyone. And I'm not trying to sound like the upstuck, cinephile, like this guy, oh, he knows movies. It just really isn't. If you're not into the really slow burn kind of story, it's definitely going to turn you off. If you've ever seen a Robert Eggers movie like The Witch, it's the same kind of thing. It's just very slow burn. But if you are able to hang around and stay long enough, the payoff is there. But more so, I think this movie is admirable enough where it contributes enough intrigue and enough information to where I enjoyed the slow burn. I think there is a payoff to the slow burn. Sometimes there's a difference, right? There's a difference between boring and slow burn, and I don't think this movie is boring. I think it's just a slow burn, and I think there is a payoff for it. But what I really want to know in the comments below, what do you guys think? Did you enjoy Nosferatu as much as us? Did you hate it? Did you love it? Were you confused? Were you, I want to know. I want to know what you guys think. Make sure, again, you leave a comment below. Make sure you leave your likes, dislikes, whatever you feel in the comments as well. But with all that being said, we are The Real Movie Guys. My name's Kevin. That's John. We'll see you in the next one, guys.
If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.